Hello, dear friends. My name is Vasyl Pekhno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist, and I invite all of you to watch this latest update on Ukrainian battle map situation as of October the 4th. So please join, watch this video, like it, share it, subscribe, and leave your comments just below the video. Let's begin today's overview. Let's start this review with probably the most difficult, the most problematic section of the front. This is the Novopavlivka direction. Novopavlivka is an area, or it can also be called Velikomikhylivka. It's the junction of the Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. These are the areas, these are the regions where, on the deep state map, we constantly see the enemy advancing, with ongoing changes on the map that show these advances. However, yesterday, by the way, in the context of these advances, there were certain, well, let's say, disputes or disagreements between deep state and our combat brigades. Now, I'll tell you about them in a certain chronological order of events. So, what happened? Well, first of all, yesterday, on the 3rd of October, the deep state team updated the map. They updated the map to show the enemy's advances. First, in the area near Olhivske, a pushed-in territory appeared, and second, in the Verbove area. A second pushed-in territory appeared, and it was precisely regarding that upper settlement, Verbove, that certain disputes began, because obviously its defenders are fighters from the 110th Mechanized Brigade. They responded to these changes on the deep state map with their own statement. In this video, our soldiers showed, first of all, how the Russians, specifically the Vostok troop grouping, initially entered Verbove, filmed enemy video, and recorded this group of 4 enemy sabotage and reconnaissance operatives. Our soldiers... And in fact, it ended with our servicemen destroying this sabotage group. One occupier managed to escape, but after that, our soldiers themselves unfurled the blue and yellow flag in the settlement of Verbove. It's not hard to pinpoint the geolocation where this actually happened, right in the very center of the settlement. If we switch directly to the deep state map, we can visualize this location using this geotag, meaning it's exactly in this gray zone where it's marked on deep state. In fact, the soldiers of the 110th Brigade themselves even posted a rather critical message saying that deep state undermines trust in their defense by shading or recoloring settlements and territories as if they are captured, when in fact, according to them, they are not. However, if we look into the actual facts, the video that the soldiers of the 110th shot in Verbove is in fact located in the gray zone on the deep state map, as we can see, and essentially there is no real conflict here. It's not accurate to say that the Russians have already captured this settlement or that deep state marks it as one that is in fact occupied. Another such location regarding which there have also been certain disputes about Sosnivka in the Volokovo-Mikhailivsky direction, where in recent days enemy advances have also been marked. Here in Sosnivka, in response to these advances, as part of the ongoing operation there, soldiers from the 23rd Mechanized Brigade in this direction published their own video showing footage of our troops present in the settlement of Sosnov, actually not Sosnov, but to be precise, Sosnivka, unfurling the blue and yellow flag, thus declaring and affirming the presence of our forces in the settlement. And our soldiers are talking not only about Sosnivka, but also about Voronezh. Ultimately, Deep State acknowledged that, yes, an offensive operation is indeed underway involving clearing and liberating settlements. Deep State does not report that our soldiers are supposedly in Voronezh, but there is confirmation that they are present in at least 4 settlements in this direction around Voronezh. So these settlements are Sosnivka, first, where flag bearers were spotted. Second is the settlement of Koroshe. Third is Novopavlivka. And fourth is Yanvarske. So regarding these 4 settlements specifically, and information came out that the fighters of the 3rd Assault Battalion of the 225th Assault Regiment cleared these 3 villages at once. They cleared 3 villages, and the 141st Separate Mechanized Brigade cleared another village. After that, fighters from other units moved into these positions. Currently, stabilization measures are ongoing, and precisely because these stabilization measures are underway, for the security of the operation, its results have not been reported on the map, as Deep State claims. At the same time, the Russians are now resuming assault actions towards Sosnivka and towards Novoselivka. In order to regain the lost positions towards Европейske, as well as, Sishneve, as analysts from Deep State note, that's exactly how they put it, the defense forces are currently not allowing the enemy to gain a foothold here. Therefore, what we have here is essentially a very, very large gray zone where the enemy's advances have been eliminated. So friends, in fact, we are at a point where, for the first time in a long while, we can talk about certain successful counteroffensive actions by Ukrainian forces in the Velikomihailivka, Novopavlivka direction or something like that. In other words, this is precisely the location where we actually had and still have the biggest problems, because according to the results of September, it was the Novopavlivka direction where, in terms of the ratio of assaults to captured territories, the worst dynamics were demonstrated as of September. Accordingly, now our soldiers are creating so-called kill zones here, or at least trying to create them. But I agree with the contributor, the well-known military blogger from the Hovorit Sniper community, who says that you can only talk about kill zones where the enemy has actually been stopped. But where the enemy is still advancing, there aren't really any. There is no such thing as a kill zone. In our case, it doesn't work, because if there is a kill zone, then the enemy can't advance. Accordingly, creating kill zones is somewhat of an end goal for us along the entire line of contact in the near future. We are striving to establish these kill zones so that the enemy has absolutely no opportunity to advance at any point along the front. Now, regarding the Novopavlivka direction, we can't say that a kill zone already exists there, but there are efforts underway to create one. Our goal is to establish them along all evacuation lines. Including in the Novopavlivka direction to some extent, there is a kill zone for the occupiers in Kupyansk, although the situation here remains quite tense and difficult, partly because the enemy continues to stay in Kupyansk, including remaining within the city limits and in its central part. The central and northern areas are now a gray zone, which has already expanded to cover almost the entire city. At the same time, the situation is very complicated. The situation is further aggravated by the evacuation, which has essentially been disrupted as enemy drones and shelling destroy all possibilities for movement. We remember the situation here that entry to Kupyansk is effectively prohibited for anyone except military personnel. So in fact, the evacuation process is now completely blocked. And those who remain in the villages around Kupyansk and in Kupyansk itself, they are essentially still cut off. They are trapped. But unfortunately, no matter how you look at it, that was their choice. And here it's important to really understand that the situation in Kupyansk is far from simple. It's definitely not okay, but this city will be a test for us. If it holds out, we will prove that Ukraine can withstand the toughest blow. When Pokrovsk is under attack, it holds out. When Kupyansk is under attack, it holds out. If, God forbid, Kupyansk falls, the enemy will gain a very, very advantageous foothold for further advances in the Kharkiv region, including a foothold to restore their stable logistics from the north with the Russian regions. In that direction, towards Russia, Kupyansk-Vuzlovi is especially important for logistical connections, for ensuring freight transport, cargo logistics, and rail logistics with the territory of the Russian Federation. Well, and there are certain nuances here for the Russian Federation. These nuances consist in particular in the fact that there are currently ongoing attempts to destroy the most technologically advanced and military facilities on the territory of Russia. At the same time, there are efforts to create the largest possible buffer zone. We can't say that we are carrying this out completely successfully, but of course we also can't say that we are completely failing at it. There are, let's say, various circumstances regarding what is actually happening at the front. I'll talk about some of them now. First of all, it's worth noting that our Special Operations Forces carried out operations yesterday in the Voronezh region, which is the northern region bordering the north of our country. Here is the Voronezh region, and yesterday in Voronezh, the SOF, Special Operations Forces, announced that they struck 2 targets. 2 very serious ones, in fact. Not so much anti-aircraft missile systems themselves, but rather components of anti-aircraft missile systems, specifically radar complexes. A long-range detection radar called Lina and a tracking radar complex called Sopka. They've already been hit. This is, let's say, a transition to the next level, the next stage of destroying the enemy's eyes that detect our drones and our missiles. In particular, the Lena radar was a component of the airspace control system around the Butolinovka Air Force Base in the Voronezh region, while the Sopka radar was part of a continuous wall of airspace tracking along the border with our country. In the village of Garmashivka in the Voronezh region, this is where the detection of aerial targets entering the territory of the Russian Federation takes place. Both of them are primarily aimed at countering our Ukrainian drones. It's clear that we are knocking out these eyes in order to fly deeper into the territory of the Russian Federation. How are the Russians responding to us in this regard? They are responding. A similar story was recently discussed by Serhiy Flesh, who wrote in his posts that we are now facing a very serious rear front, where the Russians, having Shaheds under radio control, Shaheds with cameras, with night cameras, and other strike drones like Molnia and the like, are delivering very, very serious and threatening strikes on the frontline regions and territories. For example, yesterday evening there was an incident which was also confirmed by President Zelensky. To put it mildly, it was an unpleasant incident. This was a strike on the energy infrastructure of our country, a strike on Kramatorsk, on the frontline city of Kramatorsk. Here you can see these photos from Kramatorsk. It was a strike on the local CHP, the combined heat and power plant. A serious fire broke out there caused by a ballistic strike. As a result, Drushkivka, Slovyansk, and Kramatorsk experienced power outages. And this situation does not only concern them. Last night, there was also a strike on our energy facilities, on our oil extraction, and let's say primarily gas and aluminum infrastructure. There was a strike on the Poltava region, and as we know, Poltava suffered the most as the main gas extraction facilities are located there. And the Naftogaz group of companies reported that this was the largest gas extraction complex to be hit, the biggest attack on a gas extraction complex since the start of the full-scale invasion. The Air Force reported that 18 missiles hit there and 78 attack UAVs broke through our air defense system. And air defense delivering the most massive strike on gas extraction facilities. In other words, the enemy wants to cut off our power, the enemy wants to deprive us of our energy independence, our energy capabilities and capacities. And he is doing it.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
For a long time now, he has been successfully targeting these rear facilities. Right now, essentially, as we can see, this is not the easiest task. It's far from the easiest task, but it is a task that can be accomplished by our troops. The goal is to try to push this gray zone as deep as possible, and in this case, the logic is that destroying radars and anti-aircraft missile systems allows our drones to fly deeper into the territory of the Russian Federation. If they can fly deeper, it means they are potentially pushing this buffer zone further away from our border. There are no other ways, no better options, except for moving the hostilities deeper into the territory of the enemy country. Well, they simply do not exist. No, of course, there are better ways to fight the enemy, such as shooting down their aerial targets. But in reality, the best approach is to push the war deeper and deeper into the territory of the Russian Federation. Well, I'm not going to repeat the same thing 10 times here. Our objectives, if we sum up this week in particular, which we've just lived through, a week with a lot of discussion about what the front line actually is, I've spent a lot of time educating people about what kill zones and gray zones are and how they look now. So it's important to understand that essentially we currently have two fronts. One is right on the very front line, where the movement of infantry and equipment is impossible, but at the same time it is possible to destroy each other's logistics with drones, and more the front is actually, well, I wouldn't say it's freezing over. It's becoming excessively technological. Accordingly, neither deoccupation nor occupation by the enemy is becoming possible anymore. Although there are episodes, as I mentioned, about the Novopavlivka direction, where we haven't yet managed to fully create such a consolidated, continuous kill zone, and our defense forces are currently working on this. This is the next step. There will be a continuous kill zone at the front where nothing and no one can move, but the next front, which is now the second tier that has already opened up, is the rear fronts. And here, for now, it's very difficult for us to compete because the enemy has scaled up many of their successful products while we lack sufficient support from our partners. That's why we're trying with our own hands to push the dangerous zone farther away from ourselves. Will this work for us or not? I don't know. It's a very rhetorical question, and only time will provide the answer. But the logic of the processes is exactly as I've described it. On that note, I'll put a period on today's review. Thank you, friends, for your attention. Sorry for the recording quality. I hope you were still able to grasp the main point. Thank you all. Stay healthy. All the best. And until we meet again.